Former MLB legend Fritz Peterson not only snatched his teammate's wife, but also said it was the best decision of his life.
For me, that was the best trade, best decision I ever made.
Jose Canseco exploded on Twitter, exposing his teammate's affair with his wife. Here are 8 MLB players who crossed the ultimate line and slept with their teammates' wives. Fritz Peterson. Fritz Peterson's story wasn't just some random affair that happened behind closed doors. This was something completely different, something that shocked the entire baseball world in 1973. Fritz Peterson was a left-handed pitcher for the New York Yankees, and he had this teammate named Mike Kekich, who was also a left-handed pitcher. These two guys were friends, real friends. They'd vacation together with their families, hang out all the time, and their wives got along great too. But somewhere during the 1972 season, something unexpected started happening. Peterson found himself falling in love with Kekich's wife, Suzanne, and at the same time, Kekich was developing feelings for Peterson's wife, Marilyn.
And it was something none of us intended on doing, but it happened. And I hope they make a movie out of it.
Now, most people would try to hide something like this, maybe sneak around, cause all kinds of drama. But these two, they decided to do something that nobody in baseball had ever done before. During spring training in 1973, Peterson and Kekich made an announcement that left everyone's jaws on the floor. They weren't just having affairs, they were completely swapping lives. Peterson was going to live with Suzanne Kekich and her daughters. Kekich was moving in with Marilyn Peterson and her sons. They even swapped the family pets. It was like the most unusual trade in baseball history, except it wasn't about baseball cards or players, it was about entire families. When Peterson was asked if there was anything he would change about the situation if he could go back, here's what he had to say.
Looking back now, going back then, is there something perhaps you would have changed, or something you learned from it, or something you would have done differently?
Yes, I wouldn't have married my first wife.
Yes, you heard that right. Peterson fell in love with his teammate's wife so hard that he regretted even marrying his first wife in the first place. If that isn't sick, I don't know what else is. Peterson and Suzanne got married in 1974, and they stayed together for 50 years until Peterson died in 2024. 50 years. That's longer than most regular marriages last, but Kekich and Marilyn, their relationship fell apart pretty quickly after the swap. Ended up bitter about the whole thing, while Peterson built this incredible life with Suzanne.
But Mike and Marilyn broke up quickly, but Suzanne and I did not. So for me, that was the best trade, best decision I ever made.
The baseball side of things didn't go so well for either of them, though. Peterson's career started going downhill after 1973, and he was traded to Cleveland in 1974. Kekich got traded even earlier in 1973 and posted a terrible 9.20 ERA that season, which basically ended his major league career. But here's something cool about Peterson. His ERA at the original Yankee Stadium was 2.52, which is still the lowest in that stadium's history. So even though the life swap hurt his career, he left his mark on baseball history in more ways than one. The whole thing was such a big deal that apparently Ben Affleck and Matt Damon were considering making a movie about it at one point. But this story is just the beginning of all the MLB affair scandals. Next up, we have Rick Manning. Rick Manning was an outfielder for the Cleveland Indians, and his teammate was Dennis Eckersley, who would eventually become a Hall of Fame closer. Manning and Eckersley were teammates in Cleveland from 1975 to 1977, and during that time, they got to know each other pretty well. Eckersley was married to a woman named Denise, and like a lot of baseball wives, she was part of the extended team family. She'd be at games, team events, probably got to know all the players and their families, but somewhere during those years, Manning and Denise started having an affair. This wasn't just some quick fling or one-time thing, this was a serious relationship that developed over time. And unlike some of the other stories we will still talk about, this one had lasting consequences that went way beyond just clubhouse gossip. In March 1978, the Indians traded Eckersley to the Boston Red Sox. Now, Cleveland said the trade was for baseball reasons. They wanted to acquire players like Rick Waits who could help their team, but a lot of people believed the real reason was that the Manning-Denise situation had created too much tension in the clubhouse, and they needed to separate the players involved. Here's what makes this story interesting, is that Manning and Denise didn't just have an affair and then move on with their lives. They got married in the early 1980s after Denise divorced Eckersley. So this wasn't just some rumor or speculation. Manning literally married his former teammate's ex-wife, which pretty much confirmed that something had been going on between them. For Eckersley, getting traded to Boston actually turned out to be the best thing that could have happened to his career. He started out as a starter with the Red Sox, had some good years, but then, later in his career, he became this legendary closer with the Oakland Athletics. He's in the Hall of Fame now, now, had this amazing career, but you have to imagine that whole situation with Manning and his wife was pretty painful at the time. Manning played until 1987 and then became a broadcaster for Cleveland, so he ended up staying connected to the Indians organization for a long time. It's kind of ironic that he spent so many years working for the same team where all this drama happened. What's also interesting is how this story has become part of baseball lore over the years. People still talk about it, still reference it when discussing clubhouse drama and player relationships. It's become this classic example of how personal problems can affect professional sports teams. Just like Rick, the next player on our list, didn't just sleep with his teammate's wife, but also married her. Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger's story starts when Bellinger got traded from the Chicago Cubs to the New York Yankees in 2024. Baseball fans were excited about the trade, talking about how Bellinger would fit in with the Yankees lineup, what kind of impact he might have. But some fans started noticing something interesting about Bellinger's personal life that made this trade a little awkward. Bellinger's wife is Chase Carter, who's a model and was featured in Sports Illustrated swimsuit issues. She's beautiful, successful, and has this interesting love story with Bellinger that she's shared on social media. According to Chase, she first connected with Bellinger on Instagram back in 2017. She followed him, he followed her back, and they started talking through DMs. But here's where it gets complicated. Chase was dating someone else when she started those conversations with Bellinger, and that someone else happened to be Giancarlo Stanton, who plays for the New York Yankees. So when Bellinger got traded to the Yankees, he was joining the team of his wife's ex-boyfriend. Chase and Stanton dated from 2018 to 2019, so it was a real relationship, not just some casual thing. Stanton has been with the Yankees since 2018, so he's established there, been part of the team for years. Now suddenly his ex-girlfriend's husband is going to be his new teammate. According to Chase's version of events, she and Bellinger stayed in touch as pen pals from 2017 until they finally met in person in 2020. She moved on with Bellinger not long after she and Stanton broke up in 2019. So the timeline suggests she wasn't cheating on Stanton with Bellinger, but rather that she had this connection with Bellinger that turned into something more after her relationship with Stanton ended. Bellinger and Chase went public with their relationship in 2020, and they've built this whole life together. They have 2 daughters, Caden and Sai, got engaged in 2023 and quietly got married later that year. So this is a serious, committed relationship, not some casual dating situation. But really, this kind of thing probably happens more often than we realize in professional sports. These guys are all young, successful, attractive athletes who travel in similar social circles. They probably meet a lot of the same people, date some of the same people, and sometimes end up as teammates later. Moving on, we have Raphael Palro. Raphael Palmero's story takes us back to 1988, and this one involves one of the most beloved players in Chicago Cubs history. Palmero was playing first base for the Cubs, and he was having a pretty good season. He'd made the All-Star team that year, which was a big deal for a young player trying to establish himself in the majors. But then these rumors started swirling around the clubhouse, and they involved Palmero and the wife of his teammate Ryne Sandberg. Now, Ryne Sandberg wasn't just any teammate. This guy was a Cubs icon, a future Hall of Famer, and probably the most popular player on the team. His wife Cindy was part of that whole Chicago baseball family atmosphere. The rumors suggested that Palmero was having an affair with Cindy Sandberg, and you can imagine how that would go over in a clubhouse. When you're messing around with a teammate's wife, especially when that teammate is the star of the team, it's going to create some serious tension. Baseball clubhouses are small worlds, and news travels fast. What made this situation even more complicated was that Palmero was traded to the Texas Rangers right after the 1988 season ended. Now, trades happen all the time in baseball for all kinds of reasons. Maybe the Cubs wanted to shake things up, maybe they needed different players, maybe they thought Palmero wasn't developing the power they wanted to see. But the timing of this trade, right after the affair rumors started spreading, made people wonder if there was more to the story. Some people argued that the trade made sense from a baseball perspective. Palmero had only hit 8 home runs in 1988, which wasn't great for a first baseman. The Cubs might have been looking for more power at that position. But others whispered that the real reason was to get Palmero away from the Sandberg situation before it caused even more problems. The ironic thing is that this trade might have been the best thing that ever happened to Palmero's career. He went to Texas and became this incredible power hitter, eventually finishing his career with over 3,000 hits and 500 home runs. Those are Hall of Fame numbers, and he probably wouldn't have put up those kinds of statistics if he'd stayed in Chicago. But Palmero's legacy got complicated later on when he was suspended for steroids in 2005, although he denied the allegations.
My name is Raphael Palro, and I am a professional baseball player. Let me start by telling you this. I have never use steroids today.
That suspension, combined with rumors about his attitude and selfishness, made him this controversial figure in baseball. The affair rumor with Cindy Sandberg just added another layer to his reputation as someone who caused problems wherever he went. What's interesting is that these rumors about Cindy Sandberg didn't stop with Palmeiro, as we'll see with the next player on this list, Dave Martinez. Dave Martinez's name comes up in what might be the most complicated part of this whole story, because his situation overlaps with Raphael Palmeiro's in a way that makes you really wonder what was going on with the Chicago Cubs in the late 1980s. Martinez was an outfielder who played for the Cubs from 1986 to 1988, which means he was teammates with both Palmeiro and Ryne Sandberg during that whole time period. He was there when all these rumors about affairs and clubhouse drama were supposedly happening, and according to some stories, he wasn't just a witness to the chaos, he was part of it. The rumor about Martinez was that he also had an affair with Cindy Sandberg, Ryne's wife. Now, if you're keeping track, that would mean Cindy was allegedly involved with at least 2 of her husband's teammates during the same general time period. That's either some serious coincidence, or there was something really dysfunctional going on in that Cubs clubhouse. Martinez got traded to the Montreal Expos in the middle of the 1988 season, which happened before Palmeiro's trade at the end of that year. Some people connected Martinez's trade to these affair rumors, suggesting that the Cubs were trying to clean house and get rid of players who were causing problems with Sandberg's marriage. But here's the thing about Martinez. Unlike some of the other players on this list, these rumors didn't really define his career or his reputation. He went on to have a solid 16-year playing career in the majors, bouncing around to different teams and establishing himself as a reliable outfielder. After his playing days were over, he got into coaching and managing, and this is where Martinez's story gets really interesting because he became incredibly successful as a manager. In 2019, he led the Washington Nationals to their first World Series championship in franchise history. That's a huge accomplishment, the kind of thing that makes you a legend in baseball. So whatever drama might have happened back in Chicago in the 1980s, it certainly didn't hurt his long-term career prospects. Martinez went on to have this successful managerial career, won a World Series, became a respected figure in baseball, but if you go digging into baseball gossip from the 1980s, you'll still find his name connected to these affair stories. The whole Cubs situation from that era makes you wonder about the team chemistry and what kind of environment they had in that clubhouse. But, as you'll see in the next story on our list, it went beyond the Cubs. Avisail Garcia. Avisail Garcia's story happened much more recently, back in 2013, and it involves one of the biggest personalities in baseball at the time. Garcia was this young outfielder for the Detroit Tigers, just starting to make his mark in the majors. He debuted with the team in 2012 and was showing some real promise as a player. His teammate was Prince Fielder, and if you followed baseball in the early 2010s, you knew Prince was a huge deal. This guy was a star first baseman, could hit home runs like nobody's business, and was one of the key players in Detroit's lineup. The Tigers were a good team at that time, making playoff runs and trying to win championships, but in July 2013, something happened that nobody saw coming. Garcia got traded to the Chicago White Sox as part of this complicated 3-team deal. Now, trades happen all the time during the season, but this one seemed kind of sudden. Garcia was a young player with potential, the kind of guy teams usually try to hold on to and develop. That's when the rumors started. People began whispering that Garcia had been having an affair with Prince Fielder's wife, Chanel. The story went that this affair was the real reason Garcia got traded, that the Tigers had to get him out of Detroit before the situation exploded and destroyed the clubhouse chemistry. The timing certainly seemed suspicious. You don't usually trade promising young players in the middle of the season unless something's wrong. And if Garcia really was involved with his teammate's wife, that would definitely be something the front office would want to deal with quickly and quietly. What's interesting is how this trade actually worked out for Garcia. He went to Chicago and eventually became an all-star in 2017. So if the Tigers really did trade him because of this affair situation, they might have given up a pretty good player to solve their clubhouse drama. Garcia proved he could play at a high level when he wasn't dealing with all that personal stuff. Prince Fielder's story, on the other hand, didn't have such a happy ending. His career was cut short by injuries and he had to retire in 2016. He and Chanel ended up getting divorced that same year, which kind of added fuel to the fire for the affair rumors. We can't imagine how awkward that clubhouse must have been. These guys have to work together every single day, travel together, depend on each other to win games. When personal drama gets mixed up with all that, it can destroy a team's chemistry, or it can even turn dangerous, as we'll see in our next story. Benson. Chris Benson was a pitcher who played for teams like the Pittsburgh Pirates, New York Mets, and Baltimore Orioles from 1999 to 2010. He was a decent player, had some good seasons, but what really made him famous wasn't his pitching, it was his wife Anna's mouth. Anna Benson was a former model, and she was known for being pretty outspoken about everything. She loved the spotlight, loved getting attention, and she definitely wasn't shy about sharing her opinions. In 2004, she went on the Howard Stern show, and that's where she made the comment that had everyone talking. During the interview, Howard was asking her about relationships and infidelity, you know, the kind of stuff he always talks about. And Anna, being Anna, decided to make this dramatic statement. She said that if Chris ever cheated on her, she would get revenge by sleeping with every single member of his team, every single one. Now, she wasn't saying this had happened or that she was planning to do it. This was completely hypothetical. But when you're married to a professional athlete and you go on a nationally syndicated radio show to make threats like that, people know it's not without reason. Everyone started to wonder, why his teammates? Why was Anna oddly specific about sleeping with them on live TV? It was almost as if she knew that if Chris cheated, it was going to be with a teammate's wife, and she was all for revenge. Everything even seemed to be fine afterwards. Chris's career wasn't really affected. He kept playing for several more years, and his performance was more impacted by injuries than by any clubhouse awkwardness. But then everything changed. The couple ended up getting divorced in 2011, which probably wasn't surprising to anyone who followed their relationship. Everyone concluded the obvious. Chris had probably cheated on her with that teammate's wife, but it kept getting worse. In July 2013, Anna broke into Chris's Georgia home while wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying a gun and baton, angry and hysterical.
Who the does what you do? I suck with one.
She was arrested after Chris, who was scared to death, called 911. Anna pleaded guilty to aggravated assault and weapons charges and was sentenced to 15 years probation. The incident occurred while the couple was still going through their divorce. If you thought this was dramatic, wait till you hear about Alex Rodriguez. Alex Rodriguez's story is probably the messiest and most public of all the situations we're going to talk about, and it involves some pretty serious accusations from a fellow player who wasn't afraid to air dirty laundry on social media for the whole world to see. Rodriguez, who everyone knew as A-Rod, was this superstar player for the New York Yankees from 2004 to 2016. He was one of the biggest names in baseball, made tons of money, dated celebrities, and lived this very high-profile lifestyle. After his playing career ended, he got into this very public relationship with Jennifer Lopez, the famous singer and actress that everyone calls J-Lo. A-Rod and J-Lo were together from 2017 to 2021, and it was one of those celebrity power couples that everyone followed. They got engaged, were planning this big wedding, seemed like they were living this perfect life together. But in 2021, things started falling apart when Jose Canseco decided to get involved and make some pretty explosive accusations. Canseco was a former baseball player who'd been teammates with A-Rod when they both played for the Yankees. He was also known for being pretty outspoken and willing to stir up controversy, especially on social media. In 2019, while A-Rod and J-Lo were still together, Canseco went on this crazy Twitter rant that had everyone talking. He was apparently watching World of Dance, which is a TV show where J-Lo was a judge, and he started tweeting about what he was seeing. But his tweets weren't about the dancing, they were about A-Rod and some serious accusations. Canseco claimed that while J-Lo was sitting there judging dancers and probably texting with A-Rod like any normal couple would do, A-Rod was actually cheating on her with Canseco's ex-wife, Jessica. According to Canseco, J-Lo had no idea what kind of person A-Rod really was, and he was betraying her right under her nose. But Canseco didn't stop there. He claimed that he was actually with Jessica when she received a phone call from A-Rod, which would be pretty damning evidence if it was true. He was basically saying he witnessed this affair happening in real time, and he was so angry about it that he decided to expose A-Rod publicly on Twitter. The whole Twitter rant was pretty intense. Canseco even challenged A-Rod to a fight, which sounds ridiculous but shows how seriously he was taking these accusations. He also said he was willing to take a polygraph test to prove that everything he was saying was 100% accurate, which suggests he really believed his own story. But the timing of these accusations was interesting. This was happening while A-Rod and J-Lo were still together, still engaged, still appearing to be this happy couple in public. If there was any truth to what Canseco was saying, it would mean A-Rod was living this double life, cheating on one of the most famous women in the world while maintaining this perfect public image. Whether or not Canseco's accusations were true, A-Rod and J-Lo did break up in 2021, and she did get back together with Ben Affleck pretty quickly after that. Some people wondered if there was more to their breakup than what the public knew, and Canseco's accusations definitely added fuel to those rumors. If you enjoyed this video, click on any of the cards on your screen for more content.